was planned to celebrate 60 years of Uganda's independence.
We also received the President of the Republic of Burundi.
The celebrations were graced by several leaders including Kenya's President William Ruto, Salva Kiir of South Sudan, Hussein Mwinyi of Zanzibar, Hassan Sheikh Mohamud of Somalia, Evariste Ndayishimiye of Burundi, and many others.
General Salva Kiir Mayardit, President of the Republic of South Sudan.
In his speech, the President of Uganda, Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, welcomed the invited guests after he invited all the guests.
Your Excellencies, our two countries are undertaking many joint projects in various fields, notably in the energy and transport sectors. Among those projects is the construction of the East African crude oil pipeline. Therefore, I urge the private sector from both countries to take lead in this mega project. Doing so, the private sector will employ our people and bring better life to our communities.
I urge my counterparts within the East African community to join hands and work together for the common good of all Africans.
Mr. President, I would like to take this opportunity to express our nation's gratitude for the noble sacrifices of young men and women from Uganda and other troop-contributing countries in our joint fight against international terrorism.
It is high time we strengthen our regional integration and build a more prosperous and powerful East African community having one market and one voice. This is our ultimate goal as East African, realizing the political federation.
Asante sana mzee.
In his address, William Ruto revealed that it is time for East Africa to break boundaries.
As leaders and as citizens of the East Africa region, for us to work together so that we can transform our borders, which today stand out as barriers, and convert them to bridges so that goods, services, and people can move across this East Africa without any impediments.
President Yoweri Museveni today also spoke out against exploitation from foreigners.
Why should this be tolerated? Why should this be happening in Africa 65 years after Ghana's independence? This crime of donating Africa's resources at a pittance to clever outsiders applies to copper, cobalt, tin, coltan, etc. Any wonder that African youth do not have jobs and must go for semi-slave jobs abroad.
He also revealed that Uganda will continue with the plans to construct the East African crude oil pipeline.
The oil project and other projects are unstoppable. The NLM has always had a correct philosophical, ideological, and strategic grasp of all issues. Nothing can derail us, in spite of the good movement in the world to curb the emissions of the greenhouse gases and move away from oil as fuel for cars. Our oil will remain valuable. We shall still need the oil for textiles like the shirt I normally put on.
President Museveni today revealed that Uganda has made significant strides in the last 60 years.
We have been able to produce kawunga because we used to get kawunga from Kenya. There was no kawunga here, no maize flour. Animal feeds, and we are targeting starch and ethanol.
President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni has asked all politicians in Uganda to stop fighting progress which intends to develop Ugandans.
Good morning once again, and welcome back, from that short break. Welcome to the Twitter Jabs too. My name is Agi Owase, and we are continuing the conversation on Uganda at 60 now. Yesterday, Uganda celebrated its 60th independence anniversary, and that, took place at Kololo Ceremonial Grounds. It was officiated by the president of this country, His Excellency Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, and, we saw multiple dignitaries were also part of the celebrations. And joining me this morning to give us, to dissect more and give us some insight in regard to Uganda at 60, politically, socially, and economically, are Captain Francis Babu, who is an NRM cadre, and as well as Mr. Herbert Kafero, who is a programs manager with Siatini, Uganda. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning. Good morning.
I'll start with you, Captain Francis. Now, Uganda at 60, what are your sentiments in regard, to political growth and transformation?
I think it's not sentiments. There are obvious, happenings. First of all, our population has increased.
Yes.
At independence, I think we're about 9 million. We're about 45 million now. The parameters of living have also changed. Social living, that is the economic, social, and political changes.
Yes.
Uganda has definitely moved a long way. There are some good things, and there are some failures. We are human. We're not that perfect. So we've done very well. Yesterday was a very successful day for the host, that's the president and the government of Uganda. We had some very good leaders within East Africa, and each one of those leaders brought out some very, very important points. President Ruto, in my opinion, was bang on. He talked about the East African community, the ideal East African community, what is supposed to happen, and how they can perfect it. He agreed, of course, all of them agreed that there are failures here and there. The Somali gentleman talked about security. The Minister of Rwanda also spoke very well. The man from Congo, although spoke in French, the translation clearly made it clear that they were very impressed. The important thing is that we are talking about a population of 300 million people in East Africa, which is a very big market. Uganda yesterday did try and market what we are producing here.
Yes.
And they talked about motor vehicles, electric motor vehicles. They talked about power and energy. And the Tanzanian minister, I'm sorry, I had somebody saying our relationship with the Tanzania was very clear yesterday that their relationship, especially in the energy sector, had gone a long way. And they're talking about the pipeline, which a lot of people have been trying to be experts about. But I think Ugandan is having a problem, and all of you are having a problem with media. Media and social media especially, people who have got opinions which do not have any meaning at all. They want to be presidents. They talk like a president. Somebody's talking about Uganda as if he's the president. He tells the president, this is the way you should speak, not this way. And I think that's totally wrong. One thing you should realize, the president has got a very big management group. He's got intelligence, he's got security. Therefore, before he says something, he looks at it very carefully. And that's when something goes wrong, he quickly comes out, this is wrong, and therefore we should be very careful what we do. I find a lot of people, they have this entitlement. We are entitled to this, we're entitled to that. I don't think anybody's entitled to anything. You're entitled to yourself and to be a good citizen. Now, if you go to our constitution, it's very clear on the duties of a citizen. Most of you read it, you'll be amazed. I saw somebody there talking about patriotism is to Uganda. The duties of the citizen says exactly that. It seems that they don't read. If you read the duties of a citizen, you are supposed to be patriotic to Uganda, not to anybody else. So, and what is Uganda? It's a collection of all the families in Uganda. That is Uganda. Uganda is not only the geographical area, the people who live in it are the Ugandans. Now, I liked what Mao said. We have a hindsight of how we got to here. We have this insight now, what is going on, and we have a foresight, where we are going. And I think that's the most important part. Where is Uganda going? And Uganda has been grappling with the president came out very clearly. And there's one thing Ugandans should realize. The people in Western countries and the people in Eastern countries, they don't love you. They come here to get as much money as they can out of you. And the president made it very clear. We must learn how to work with these people so that our citizens can get something out of it. Independence Day, a lot of people have never realized, is not for the government. Independence Day is for Ugandans. Why? Because the white man came here to try and, in fact, when they were in Berlin, they were not dividing these countries because they were being very nice people. They were dividing this country on the resources they could get out of those countries. Some of the European countries, actually, their present-day development and what they have came from Africa. So time has come, and I think yesterday the president was very clear. Those are the messages I got yesterday. The time has come. First of all, we create our market. We remove those borders, because those borders are artificial, made in Berlin, on the partition of Africa. The people don't want us to combine. They don't want us to get together, because if we do, we become stronger. For example, what would have somebody said in 1962 that Uganda will be producing buses, electrical buses, motorbikes, which are going to move? Who would think that today we would also have internet and be able to read, be part of the international community? Except that there's so much information and disinformation. Ugandans seems to have appetite for disinformation. They keep on saying Uganda's security is bad. The people who have gone to other countries try to be funny. They were arrested. People go to those countries carrying drugs. They are arrested. Well, you don't talk about security of other countries. Talk about securities. You people love United States. The other day they went to the Congress and played around. Half of them are in jail. So you cannot say that Ugandans will not keep its security simply because you're talking about human rights. Human rights, yes. If there's something wrong which is done, yes, we should follow it through. But if people are violating other people's human rights, what do? You see, there's a tendency for you to think human rights is a one-way traffic. It is not. Your behavior could be impinging on my human rights. If you come and riot and steal everything in my shop, that is against me, the citizen. Human rights is not a one-way traffic. So some of the people who talk about human rights, first of all human rights are not absolute. Some human rights are, which are inherent, like breathing. As a human being, God gave you breathing and all that. But there are some human rights which have got limits. And that's why the penal code actually on some human rights makes laws that are against human rights. For example, you're free to drive your car on left or right. You're free. That's your right. But the penal code says no. To have a good flow of traffic and order, you drive on the left. Now, if you violate that and you're arrested, you say, but they are violating my human rights. Yes, they are, but that's an order of a country. So, whilst we talk about human rights, and I agree, there's a few violations here and there, we've got to be exact. What are we talking about? Is a political activism where you say you're going to remove the government next week. What is that? How do you describe that?
Sorry to cut you short, but
yes.
Talking about the violation of human rights and, the people that are talking about the security in Uganda, I think they're more focused on the unlawful abductions of, people and unlawful arrests that have been taking place in the country. So many people have been missing. It's out there in the media, in the public. And the other day, Honorable Kahinda Otafiire came on to say security operatives and police officers that are abducting and unlawfully arresting these people will be apprehended. Yes, but the Security Minister Jim Muhwezi, however, disregarded that there are people who are being abducted. Violation of human rights. I think that is what we are focusing on.
Look at media.
Now.
You have just used two words.
Yeah.
You used abduction and you used arrest.
Unlawful arrest.
What do you mean unlawful? What is lawful? Which arrest is lawful and which one is unlawful? I think media should now sample. Yes, I agree. If there's unlawful and you can prove it,
yes,
you bring it out. If then it is the arrest, a normal arrest, that's not unlawful. They can arrest you for doing something wrong.
You are arraigned in courts of law, yes?
They do.
But these people haven't been arraigned in courts of law.
Which ones? You
the
have to
people who
prove.
have been abducted.
No, but they
until
have given
this
you a
day.
list. They have given you a list. The government has accepted some, and they have refused the others. So which one are we talking about? I think the media is taking the whole thing into one. Let us segregate these things. Who was arrested unlawfully, and prove it was unlawful. That's number one. Number two, those who were arrested lawfully have been taken to military courts. They have been taken to ordinary courts. Now, which ones are not? And if they're there,
yes,
and they have lost their lives, they should prove it.
The other day, Honorable Kyagulanyi Ssentamu, who is the leader of NUP,
yes,
did actually take to social media on Twitter and put out, a list of the names of the people who are missing, yes, especially NUP party members. Yes. The allegations are they've been abducted by security operatives. Until this day, their families, even Ugandans, do not know where they are. Those are the lists of names.
That is Kyagulanyi.
So, yes.
How about the minister? Don't you take the minister's admission? You don't talk about it? The minister says, no, we don't have that kind of thing. So who is right and who is wrong? The other day,
yes,
the same gentleman you're talking about went to the Middle East and he was also arrested. We have to be very careful. Was that violating human rights? They had their reason. Let me tell you, you can play in Uganda with security. You do not play in other countries with their security. I want you to know this. A lot of people have this attitude of playing around. You're talking about activism here, and you want to take it to other countries. The other countries, if you are impinging on their international image, they will arrest you. All I am trying to say, yes, if there is violation, please let us arrest somebody, and as you say, let's make it transparent.
Yes. Okay.
If because once you tell me, by next week I shall remove Museveni from government, and then you're the same person who says, we've been arrested. Now, removing the government is treason. I want us to be very careful. How do you mix the two? And how do you separate the two? Here is somebody who announces publicly, but next week the government is gone. Yeah. You will not get your oil. We shall fight you in Europe. We shall. Okay. I mean, these things have got a reverse thing.
Yes.
What I'm saying, please listen, don't get me wrong. I am against violation of human rights. But I'm also very careful in accusing government without concrete proof.
Okay.
You are saying somebody was arrested, yes. But I know that some NUP people were arrested and they've been released. Some of them go to court. There are some who are in prison. They've been going to court. Now, those ones you're saying who have not been released, we would like government also to come out and speak, because there's one time I think a minister came to Parliament and read the names of those they have got. Now, those who they don't have, where are they? Now, this is a question that can be answered by trying to find out. How about if it's a mixture of the two? How about if the other people are hiding them? Okay. And they're saying government is one who has got them.
Okay, we shall get back to that conversation, Captain.
So the human rights, we've got to be very careful. We've got to be very careful. There are laws in this country. There's a penal code in this country, and your behavior is also very important. As I told you, the citizens have got a duty to this country, and it is in our constitution. It's very, very clear. And I suggest very strongly that people read the duties of a citizen. Because you are supposed to be, in fact, you are supposed to fight for your human rights, that other people do not violate your human rights apart from government. There are people who are being, recently I read people, something I didn't like. They arrested some people near Busega on the expressway. And the mob treated them very badly. They undressed them. They did all. Now, those are kind of things that's against human rights. Why do you okay, if you have arrested him, take him to the police. Don't undress him publicly. Exactly. But those are the mob justices that are coming out of human rights violation also by other people in our society.
Okay, we shall get back to that. But Mr. Hubbard, now the socio-economic transformation has been part of Uganda's DNA, and President Museveni has re-echoed it over and over again, even yesterday. Now, how much have we achieved in regard to that?
Thank you so much. First of all, I'd love to introduce myself. My name is Hubbard Kafero. Like you rightly stated, I work with SEETVSunrise Uganda as a programs manager. SEETVSunrise is a non-government organization. We work towards promoting pro-development trade, fiscal and investment-related policies and processes for sustained equitable development in Uganda and the ESC region. But first, I would also wish to congratulate all Ugandans upon reaching the 60th anniversary, independence anniversary. It's the diamond anniversary. But also to, of course, look back that before independence, we were colonized. And colonialism has had far-reaching implications on Uganda. And of course, we recognize the turbulent political history of Uganda. But when the NRM government came into power, and since 1986, Uganda has experienced fast-paced economic reconstruction. And of course, we need to recognize the fact that the economy was ailing at the time. There were policy choices that were made. Of course, with in May 1987, there was the adoption of structural adjustment programs. And of course, they called for liberalization, privatization, deregulation. And of course, those reforms at the time were implemented in order to revamp the ailing economy. And since then, the economy has actually had some dark spots. So these dark spots have been in numerous sectors as a result of the too much liberalization. When we were told to liberalize, we overdid it. And so the government role sort of reduced. And over the years, the government has actually implemented a number of strategies towards making the economy work. However, it hasn't worked for all people. There are those that really are left behind in terms of development. But if we were to look at, of course, the economy broadly, post-independence, and of course, the current times. Yes. But just to look at the changes that happened. For example, government role in the banking sector reduced. The private sector is having a stronger hand in the financial sector. And of course, that has had challenges. Who controls credit, controls, the critical capital that the business community needs to operate. And of course, when you look at the profiteering in the economy, the private sector is all about profits. And yet, of course, we recognize that the government's role cannot be really overemphasized. Government has a strong hand in development. However, over time, we've seen that, of course, it's the private sector coming up. And with COVID-19, this liberalization and its shortfalls manifested a lot because, of course, we saw the health profiteering where, the out-of-pocket spending increased. And of course, if you didn't have much money to afford oxygen and all that, you wouldn't. But of course, there are a number of positive strides that we recognize, even beyond, beyond the dark spots. Yes. Of course, looking at the industrial development, and a number of industries have come up. Because when you look at back in the days and now, the nominal GDP has increased. And of course, we'll look at that the population has also increased. So that has also had a number of strains on government, because with population increase means more spending on the side of government. And also when you look at the economic base has also increased as a result of these industries that have come up. But in a way of scanning, really the economy, we see that there are a number of challenges, multiple crises that we're battling with. And these crises, of course, include the trade deficit, the ever-increasing trade deficit. Of course, the president acknowledges that exporting raw commodities is exporting jobs. We are losing jobs, because when you add value, that means you're creating jobs along the value chain. And looking at issues of the recurrent revenue shortfall, And yet at the same time as we're experiencing the recurrent revenue shortfall, we're giving out tax incentives. You get. So the nature and the manner in which we're attracting investors is also questionable because, you know, attracting an investor takes more than giving tax incentives or land concessions. There are other factors, the political stability, you know, the environment within which, you know, someone invests. And of course, as Siatini, we've been calling for the review of the investment framework, the Investment Code Act 2019, because there is need to strengthen regulation in order, for example, to have performance requirements for investors. Yes. Because as investors come in, there's need for them to deliver on some promises of technology transfer, promises of job creation, and of course skills transfer, but that hasn't really been delivered on because now we've seen the generous, you know, tax incentive regime that is causing the leakages, financial leakages, you know, loss of the much needed revenue and the resources. And if we are to also look at the human capital development, of course, National Development Plan 3 recognizes the need for government to focus on that. There is a lot of progress in the health sector that has been attained because, of course, the number of diseases that the government and the Ministry of Health has,
yes, absolutely. There is an Ebola outbreak at the moment, and we've, you know, actually lost some health workers. But we'll get back to that conversation. Now, back to you, Captain Francis. Since Uganda attained independence in 1962 until this day, we haven't seen a peaceful transfer of power. Yes, 36 years of NRM. What does that say about, you know, the Uganda political terrain?
Again, that is a misinterpretation.
Yes.
Since 1962, from 62 to about 80, we never had elections in this country. Since 1985, 86 up to 90, from 1990 onwards, we started having elections. We started with rudimentary elections. We then, 84, had the CA elections, and since that time we're having elections every 5 years. We've never missed having elections, and people stand for elections. And you're free if you go there and win. And if you look at everybody, apart from the president, everybody has been to the people to ask to be elected. The others work for government. Now, when you say that statement, it means that we've not had any elections at all. We have. It's just that what you're saying is that the party which has got a candidate who's been standing all the time, he has been winning. Now, until you prove otherwise, he has gone through the elections and there has been power from 1 year to the same person. What you might want to say is that you want it to change. Like the British and Americans, they want to have a regime change. That, again, is also wrong. What you have to do is to say if there is something wrong with those elections, you have to find ways and means to correct them. But you cannot say there has not been a transition power. Why do you want to change it? And that's another point. You're having a system. People are electing. They elect the same president every time. If you feel there's something wrong with that election, correct it. I'm not saying you shouldn't. But you cannot stop a party which is bringing their persons to come into the elections. And it has a lot to do with our country. Right from 1960, the things that have happened and this stability we have had for the last few years. You people like to copy Americans and the British.
Do we?
5 years, you must go away. 10 years, you must go away. Why?
There is nothing like you must
I have
go
never
away.
understood. No, I have never understood why you must have, after 10 years, somebody must go. Why? Where did that come from?
But there's a reason why
is it a human right?
There's a reason why there were term limits and, you know, term limits and age limits. But we have seen that change in Uganda.
When we were doing the constitution, I was there. I didn't agree with the age limit. It's a violation of human rights. What about term limits? Term limits, you could put it there. But tell me something. Where did you get the term limit from? For a country that is developing. Where did you get the term limit from? Where did you get the 5 years? Why should a government last for 5 years? In Uganda, 5 years. In France, 7 years. In the United States, 4 years. Where did that time come from? How do you measure it? Who measures it? We copied something. We copy, and this is where we're having a problem. We copy a lot of these things from other people. I would like to see a change, but a change that is also democratic. A change.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but we've been having elections. You can say whatever you like. No,
Yes.
we've even gone to court. The court has never said these were wrong elections.
Yes.
Yes.
But
And the constitution you're talking about was changed legally. It was not illegal to change that constitution. There's a chapter, a complete chapter, and those articles were changed because of what they thought, what the people thought would be there. I might not have wanted to change them, but the majority of people there changed it.
yes.
Now, if I want to change it back, I have to go there and move a motion again. And by the way, why am I speaking like this? I'm tired of people being unfair to themselves. You are sitting there and you're worried about changing the president, but you're doing it the wrong way. If our election, the system is not good, the electoral commission, you talk about people, you insult people, all right? Look at other countries. They've also had problems. United States the other day had a problem. They said the Russians had entered their elections. They have changed. The United States changes presidents every 4 years or every 8 years. So, and after 8 years, they don't come back again. Now, you want us to get that system. There's nothing wrong with it, but convince the people. Convince those who are there. Sit down and find a way to be able to have elections that can change those people. But if you think you're going to use activism and you are going to destroy the economy of Uganda, by going to Europeans and telling them, why don't you fight Museveni for us? The Europeans fought us for 70 years. They brought this country where it is. They have continued underground, subterranean, to destroy our economies, not to want us to put our countries together.
Yes.
You cannot convince me. Let the people of Uganda be the one to decide. And I want you, Owase, and a lot of you in the media, find a way to look at our electoral system, look at how we can elect our president, and then say, now we have another candidate.
Yes.
No matter what happens, even one day, no matter what happens, President Museveni is going to say, time has come, I'm bowing out.
Yeah.
And then we shall have elections. Now, if you want to bring back the 10 years, I'll be one of those people who say, 10 years on what basis? To 5 years on what basis? I don't mind you having 5 years, or 4 years, or 7 years, but why are we having it that way? What has that term limit got in relation with our development?
Yes, but after 36 years of NRM in power, isn't it the right time to start talking about a transition, as some people have put it on social media?
What do you mean transition? Transition
of power,
is constitutional. Transition is constitutional.
Yes.
Why talk about transition? It is constitutional. Every 5 years there's an election.
Yes, but when you talk about the constitution and the rule of law, the other day, the General Muhoozi Kainerugaba took to social media, and I'll just put it the way he did because I found it very intriguing. He talks about the constitution and the rule of law, those do not apply in Uganda. He talked about the revolution is what applies. That is a tweet that he put out there. That is opinion. You also have an opinion, Ewase. Even when you're getting your boyfriend or your husband, that is your choice. If this is the way the young man thought, and it was wrong, then he should try, and everybody told him what you have done is wrong, and they have even apologized. We all have children. They all make mistakes. I think we should be very careful. Did he do that officially, or he did that personally, and he cannot separate the two? Now, I've had a lot of statements. You only picked up Kainerugaba. I've just had I only picked out that one because you talked about the constitution.
I just had a general the other day that Uganda and some other group were behind the winning of elections by Ruto.
Those ones
no, why don't you talk about those also?
The reason I brought this up is because you talked about the constitution. No. And yes.
Even this general.
And he disregarded the constitution and the rule of law on social media. Social media is a very powerful, platform.
Let me
you
tell
can't
you something.
disregard the constitution.
A lot of you would make statements against the constitution, and you are made grand.
Okay.
May I give you, and I'm giving you an example. I'm going to remove Museveni next week. Is that a violation of the constitution, in your opinion?
Oh, yes.
Are people not walking around this town?
But there's so many double standards.
Wait, you go from here to the Middle East, to go and arraign their country internationally,
Yes.
what do you expect they will do to you?
I would expect that they arrest you.
That's going against their constitution.
Yes.
Now, what I'm trying to say, okay, the young man said this thing. I have no problem with it. They've told him what you did was wrong. His father has come out on behalf of his family. They have apologized. And to me, when somebody says sorry, I don't keep on singing it. It does not become a song. I think we should also be able to become like gentlemen. Yes, he made a statement which was wrong. They have said we are sorry. The people they talk to have said we accept the apology.
Yes.
And you Ugandans are continuing with it in social media to try and prove a point.
Not really, because the issue with Kenya and Uganda, that one, I don't think we are talking about it anymore. For me, I was more intrigued by the rule of law and the constitution being disregarded. And the fact that you brought it up, that, you know, all these term limits and the age limits are constituted in the constitution, that is why I brought it up, because if we disregard it, then we are not
but that's not
anything
in the constitution. People's opinions are not in the constitution. That is on the responsibility of a citizen. You as a citizen, you are supposed to be responsible. Now, let's get this thing corrected. I am not saying what the young man, or what the young general said was right. All I am saying, he said this, and a lot of, including myself, were not happy about it.
Okay.
But it was taken even at a higher level. The father came out and said, no, this was wrong. We apologize.
Yes.
To me, when somebody has made an apology, you don't turn it like a song. This happens between families. If you have a quarrel with your wife, it continues until you're 50. This is not a wife-husband argument. This was an opinion. And by the way, how many of your friends have got wrong opinions? And which sometimes violate life. And yes, I agree. That I've had a general, another one, was saying that Uganda and some company were there to rig the elections of Kenya. Now, that's a very serious allegation.
Okay, and now let's move on. Mr. Kafero, earlier you're talking about what the statement the president said yesterday in regard to export of labor. Now, there's an unemployment rise in the country at the moment. And the other day, the game store in Lugogo is actually is closing down. About 300 Ugandans are about to lose, their jobs. So let's talk about the unemployment gap in the country.
Thank you so much. Of course, unemployment is a reality that especially the youth are living.
Yes.
And it's a big challenge that is there for all of us to address, not only for the government, but since the government has that responsibility, over all of us, then it's something that maybe the government needs to look into more seriously. But of course, as a way of addressing unemployment, there are strategic things that government needs to do. Of course, creating jobs is one of them. And there's been a lot of talk around job creation. And of course, every financial year, there's been really, different initiatives that are brought up that, this will create the much needed jobs, and this will, expand our tax base and be able to take us to the next level. And of course, we need to look at where, the youth are. Since they are the majority of the unemployed class, we need to look at where they are. Because, for example, when you look at figures from the latest survey that was done, that revealed that over 40% of vocational graduates cannot find what to do. And you see, we were transitioning from unemployment that is caused by, the education system. That was the talk, that unemployment is caused by the education system that creates job seekers than job creators. But now there is another problem of nearly 40% of vocational graduates not being able to find the much needed jobs. And yet they don't have the capital to create jobs. And look at startups. A number of youth have ventured into, different startups. They have started out startups, and some are entrepreneurs out there. But when we look at the business environment, the cost of doing business is still high. When you look at the kilo electricity tariffs, with inflation, yesterday I read in the papers that is actually around 637 shillings per kilowatt for industrialists and commercial users. And when you also look at, for example, the cost of internet is also high. We're talking about digitizing Uganda, but the efforts that we are, undertaking, yes. For example, the internet excise duty on internet data is actually against digitizing, and yet now internet is not only part of the social life but also the business life of entrepreneurs.
Yes.
People are using it for business, but let's look at whether the policy regime is enabling. For example, the tax regime, the 12% excise data, the 12% interest on excise data. I mean, the 12% tax on internet data is also kind of taking us back.
It's exorbitant.
So it's sort of exorbitant. And look at creating the much needed jobs.
Yes.
The process of attracting investors, because that also has a bearing on creating the much needed jobs. We are operating with a generous tax incentives regime.
Yes.
That is actually not only making us to lose the much needed revenue, but also causing financial hemorrhage, because we allow investors to actually repatriate profits.
Yes.
But how about if we look into joint ventures? How about if we look into creating incentives for the investors to plow back the profits into the economy and create more jobs? The president emphasized the issue of exporting, the problem of commodity dependence, that we're exporting jobs when we export raw materials. But that has been the talk for over the years.
Yes.
Because when you look at the hides and skins industry, most of the hides and skins are actually 90% are exported as unprocessed. And the Ministry of Finance recognizes that Uganda is losing $271 as a result of exporting unprocessed skins and hides. And as if that is not enough, the coffee that we export is also unprocessed. And of course, the president reiterated that our share of export earnings globally. But Uganda has also been trapped at the lower end of the coffee value chain. And of course, that also goes to the agreements that we signed, the trade agreements. Under the trade arrangement with European Union, everything but arms, we're exporting everything but arms. There are issues, all clauses that lock us into the export of raw materials.
Yes.
Because, it has to do with everything with trade agreements. What you sign either gives you flexibilities to export value added or to export raw. And looking at, of course, what we export, we've been exporting raw coffee beans. That has kept us with a trade deficit and minimal returns from our exports. But also, it also gets back to our culture of, consuming the coffee domestically. There is low consumption of coffee. Look at countries like Ethiopia. Ethiopia's earnings from coffee are as a result of huge domestic consumption.
Yes. Okay, now later on we are going to talk about how some of the government initiatives, are benefiting the youths, in trying to improve rather the employment status of the country. Now, back to you, Captain. Now let's talk about this year's theme, which has been a declaration of African interdependence and shared destination. Now, how feasible is this objective?
Oh, it's very important. That's why they were talking about the market yesterday. We are supposed to do, that's why we've come out with the African trade, and we have got East African, we've got COMESA. All these were really set up so that we could improve our dependence on each other, because our markets are very small. You take Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania, each country's got a small market. Some are a little bit more than the others, but we're having a lot of problem with that. Our populations are increasing. We're looking for jobs. But at the same time, we must also tell the people that within these 60 years, the base of employment has also increased, but not as fast as the population. So there's a tendency to speak only on one side. And
Yes.
for example, the jobs are not enough, yes, but what have we done? If you look at communication, if you look at service industries in this country, and you look at the industries that have been put up, and you try and get the number of the people who are employed in this industry, the number has increased. They are not enough. We still have more people. We've now come up with more universities. People don't talk about this. We had only one university in the whole of East Africa. Then each country got universities. Each of these countries now has got several universities. If you look at our country now, we have so many universities, and this is producing young graduates, and these young graduates need jobs. We are having telecommunication companies which are in this country. You were talking about supermarket a few minutes ago. The supermarket games which came here, set it up. Our local people had not come up with their own supermarkets.
Yes.
But the indigenous have come out with the supermarket that are surpassing games. No, you're talking about, there was Uchumi, there was ShopRite.
Tuskies even closed
Tuskies.
as well, yes.
Now there is these people. These people came from outside. Now, looking at the South African groups, they had come here, and they're also producing goods. They were using those supermarkets as outlets. When they came here, the goods that we had in East Africa, they started competing. So at this competition and the number of local indigenous supermarkets, some of these companies are closing up.
Yes.
And they had spread. And we are producing virtually some of those things in Kenya here. We have a few that come from the five countries. What we need to do is to look at us in Africa, that we should not allow these companies, when they come to our country, to go, because this is interdependence, the one you're talking about earlier on. Now, that one has to be, the government has to look at it. How do we keep them in the market? Personally, I'm a bit sad that we are losing games, we are losing ShopRite, Uchumi. But Uchumi's problem started in Kenya, not here. And games, their big company in South Africa, has been also downsizing. So we need to know all these things. So that, but our local supermarkets, you take a supermarket like Capital Shoppers, you take Quality, and they are really, really doing a good job. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm encouraged that the local people have also come up with very good supermarkets. That's why they say we should also have local banks, banks by local people. There has been a tendency, I don't know if the accusations are that people fight local banks, but we need we need banks which are indigenous, Ugandan. And the UCB, as far as I'm concerned, Uganda has a date to bring back our UCB because that was indigenous. Now you look at KCB, Kenya Commercial Bank, which came after UCB, is still there. It's all over East Africa.
Yes.
Yeah. So we need that interdependence is very important. And I was very happy with the President Ruto. He really spoke very well about the community, about how we can improve the 300 million people in this area. Now, jobs can only come if we create more industries and we improve our agriculture so that there is production. We improve our mineral sector. We have a lot of sectors that can bring about employment.
Yes.
But we need people to put it in action, and we need to implement. One of the problems we have in this country is implementation. Things are, by the way, we have fantastic write-ups about some of these things, but we are not implementing them as fast. So what President Ruto said, and I really pity our president, he took the whole baggage and put it on our president. You have more experience, you are ahead of us, you make sure that these things are implemented. Basically, that's what he was saying. So our president has got a date now to come up and say, look, we are now cracking the whip. Let's get the systems working. I think that's where the problem is.
Yes.
The problem is that we don't know what to do. We just don't implement them. And we get ourselves in trouble. Look at this thing about the students who come from East Africa to study here. Somebody's talking about student permits. Each school, you don't need even to go anywhere. Each school has got a list of foreigners. They should send them to the immigration and say, this is what we have.
Yes.
So this is a matter of implementation and methods of work. So I think sometimes we pick on small things that don't matter. What we should pick up is how do we work together. I looked at, when you were talking, you talked about Otafire, President Mr. Otafire and the government. Government has recognized that some of our people in the security misuse their authority. And he has warned the police, they have warned the people, even the president has warned all the security organs to start using better methods of arresting people. You must have done enough investigation before you go to get somebody arrested. Mm-hmm. And you must tell them you've been arrested because of this.
Yes, and have an identification, yes.
Yes, have an identification. They do. They tell them who they are, by the way.
They do?
Yeah, they do.
Okay, but in the interest of time, let's talk about, you mentioned what His Excellency William Ruto talking about the East African integration. So do you believe a borderless East Africa is actually possible?
You're talking to the converted.
Yes.
I was against those borders for many years. When I first went in East Africa, to go to Nairobi, you needed to have a passport, you need to have some sort of, when you reach Nairobi airport, they would give you 6 months.
Yes.
But in a period now, you can go to Kenya with just your identity card. Tanzania, not yet. But we need to open up. And I think this is what he was saying. I said, listen, the benefit of closing the borders and tariff barriers, it does not help East Africa.
Yes.
The benefits are more if we don't have those borders. And for example, what we are talking about, we had in the past the East African community, the common services, the income tax of East Africa. We had East African harbors, East African railways, East African airways. What we're saying really, we missed the boat when we unbundled the East African community.
Yes.
We are now putting it back. So what he's saying is we should put it back and bring it, and then go to the African common market, which they are talking about. And let me tell you, I was very impressed. We produce milk here in a tin, and I went to Tanzania, it was on the shelves. My friend in Nigeria told me it is on the shelves. Now, if we can do that kind of thing, where each country produces something, it would be very good. Some people say, oh, but you see, United States has got this. United States has got 50 countries in one.
Yes.
People have never talked about this. Uganda is a very small, minute. If you put one of the states in America, Uganda will be swallowed. So when people talk about this, you should give us the true picture. Those are very big countries, and their methods of work. They have gone to all our countries. They have taken oil. They have taken this. And that's what the president was talking about yesterday.
We'll definitely revisit that conversation, but would like to pick your final remarks briefly as we wind up the conversation.
Well, I'd like to congratulate the host and the Ugandans for having had such a lot of visitors. It is a pity because of the pandemics and Ebola. People were not able to go to the field, but a lot of good things were said. I like to thank all the presidents who came. They spoke. The Burundian president was really good. He was out there. You could see, he said, we are the same. And by the way, basically, apart from Congo, which has got 118 million people, I think, the rest of us are about the same, and in terms of population. So by opening it up, and putting our resources together, we can change this country. All the good things that these countries have achieved, let's consolidate them. And all the bad things, let's find a solution to them. Because they are there.
Yes.
I'm not saying they are not there. Please don't get me wrong. My way of debating is, why this? Why do we have this? Why must we be like other people? Why can't we do it so that our people benefit? So I think what we need to do here is to make our people benefit. And if His Excellency listens to people, maybe he can say time has come. Because I looked at Malaysia. There was a prime minister who was there for many years. He went away. At 94, they brought him back. And they brought him because they said, these guys are destroying our country. So it really doesn't matter. As far as I'm concerned, we can find solutions. It's not the end of the world. Our president is listening. Yes. And he's got enough intelligence. So it's time for him to say, look, for me to change this country, this is what I'll do. And one of them, maybe I ask the people sometime that let me bow out and let the other people come in. And I would like the president himself to do it, not to ask other people to force him out of it.
Okay. Yeah. And you said it's time to crack the whip.
Yes,
that's
crack
exactly
the whip so that we can work
exactly
harder.
what you said. Mr. Kafero, give us your final remarks.
Thank you so much. I think what needs to be done now is to go beyond the rhetoric and, of course, actualize on the things that, of course, the president says and the things that we keep talking about every financial year. For example, if we want to, of course, achieve a value addition, the budget towards agro-industrialization needs to increase. For example, now, currently, it's 1.419 trillion. That might not lead us to where we want to go. And of course, looking at the parish development model, where each parish is, of course, getting 100 million, and we are looking at the parish development model being a vehicle to enable us to achieve wealth creation, value addition, and a number of other things. But when you look at that, it might not be able to help us create the value addition infrastructure. But also looking at our relationship with different countries at the EAC level, we need to strategically position ourselves. And of course, the president has talked about the issue of utilizing markets out there. But you see, Uganda's approach has been more of diversifying products than diversifying markets. Okay. We have so many products that we are selling out there, but our comparative advantage is not that strong. How about if we diversify markets? Can I call you like, back? For example, Kenya's example, Kenya has pursued product-specific agreements with other countries, Korea, China, and the rest. So what they do, they has avocados. They have been actually signing product-specific agreements and agreeing on quantities, agreeing on quality, and working backwards, but with a secured market. But Uganda's approach has been more of boosting production, and farmers now wake up to the reality of there is no market, but also the challenges of standards that we are facing as a country, and producers are facing, and they are curtailing them from utilizing other different markets. But look at AfCFTA is before us, and guided trading has already started among pilot countries, but now there is the rules of origin. So AfCFTA is still being negotiated, the African Continental Free Trade Area. However, the preparedness of our private sector, I think, needs to be taken seriously. There's need for government and the relevant agencies, for example, Ministry of Trade and the agencies under it, Uganda Export Promotion Board, to work towards, of course, mobilizing and disseminating relevant information among the private sector and other, key players, such that we utilize opportunities from an informed point of view. Okay. And we are able to, of course, tap into the opportunities that are in.
Yes. Yes. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us. Thank you, Captain. Thank you, Mr. Kafero. Well, this is a conversation that we'll definitely have to revisit. A lot has been left out, but maybe next time. I've been joined by Captain Francis Babu and NRM Kada, as well as Mr. Herbert Kafero, who is a programs manager with CNTini Uganda, and we were talking Uganda at 60. They gave us a lot of insight. Anyway, coming up is our views. Keep watching Sunrise at Sea, and don't blink.